Imagine a field of wheat under a moonlit sky. A soft hush, a distant hum, and then the crops lie flat in perfect geometries, but that had no time to grow, no footprints to betray their maker. Overnight, what was once earth became a canvas, painted with circles, spirals, symbols, visible only from above. Welcome to the world of UFOs and crop circles, here on Things Visible and Invisible. Jennifer Stein is a veteran filmmaker and researcher in the world of ufology. One area of specialism in her work is on crop circles and the UFO phenomena, and she joins me down the line from her home in Arizona. Jennifer, welcome to Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, when I first came across your work, Jennifer, I was both attracted and repelled in equal measure. Let me explain what I mean by that. Crop circles is something which I remember when the phenomena first came about, and it was something of fascination, but then very quickly seemed to descend into farce. And there were a lot of debunkers of the crop circle phenomena to the point where nobody really took it seriously. However, you do. How come?
Well, I've had the experience of being in crop circles when they are fresh and new. And I've had odd phenomenon happen. Like when you walk in and you're on your cell phone and you have 4 or 5 bars and you walk into the field and suddenly you step into the formation and the cell phone call goes dead, right? Then you step back out just a few feet and your call is right there again. So there's an electromagnetic field or something unusual being generated. And that got my attention right away. I also had a camera once, a very high quality Sony video camera I was using. And my very first trip to England in the crop circles around 2000. And I wanted to both take film and take still digital photos with my digital camera at that point. It was before we had iPhones and phones that did everything for us, right? So I set my high quality video camera down in the formation and started to take a group of cells and then walked back to my backpack and picked it back up. And when I tried to use it, the heads of the turning, it was a film type camera that still had a videotape in it. And when the two heads spun, they didn't spin at the same speed. And the camera never worked again. And it just was snow to me when I looked at the viewfinder. It was very strange. And I eventually had to replace the camera. Sony replaced it for me. So I experienced unusual phenomenon myself. Mm-hmm. And that got my attention. I was like, wow, what's going on here?
Okay, well, we're definitely going to unpack what's going on there. But Jennifer, I need to have a little bit of frame of reference here. My understanding of crop circles was something that's sort of the late 80s, early 90s. There seemed to be a rash of them and they hit the media. But in your research, is this a phenomena that has an older history than that?
Oh, yes. There are wood blocks in your British Museum that can be found from 1654, quoting, these are marks of the devil maker, or they are fairy rings, right? Because these were happening in ancient times and no one really understood what they were. And local parishes felt like they'd been, either blessed by fairies or by God, or they'd been visited by the mowing devil. There's also during your Blitz that took place in the Second World War, when many people, many children were sent out into, the Wiltshire area to avoid the London Blitz and, the bombing that was taking place. And they recall walking into formations in, that period of time and playing in them. So there's also Native American historical references to them, like the Native American symbols and also the Pennsylvania Dutch symbols that we often see on barns around in the United States and in Germany stem from or the orientation of crop circle geometries.
So this isn't something that's just sort of as a result of young minds that were too influenced by sci-fi from the 1950s onwards. There's a longer history than that. Has there been any attempt to understand it prior to the 1990s, 1980s? Was there any attempt to prior to this, an academic or somebody, a writer or somebody who was trying to understand this phenomena in a serious way?
Yes, yes. I refer people to the work of biophysicist William Levengood. He was part of a team called BLT Research. He, Nancy Talbot, and another man named John. Oh, I'm blanking on John's last name at the moment, but BLT was part of their three names. So they did peer-reviewed research um, in peer-reviewed periodicals where they actually took the samples of the crop and the soil both inside the formation and outside the formation. So they would do a comparison study of the soil and of the crop and of seed germination studies on the seeds, depending on what type of crop it was, whether it was oilseed rape, whether it was barley or wheat. And they determined that formations that happened inside crops that appeared late in the growing season when the seeds were fully mature, these seeds grew in germination chambers at a higher, faster rate. They germinated more quickly, and they grew at a double increase in growth rate and more uniformly. And then seeds or formations that happened early in the growth stage when the seeds were just recently planted or the crops were really small, the seed growth was stunted universally across the board. And then the seeds outside the formation seemed to be not affected.
Incredible.
So that was really quite fascinating to me.
And Jennifer, what year are we talking about in that study?
This peer-reviewed journal work was done, I believe, around 1998, 1999 by BLT Research, and
Okay.
it was to the tune of about $100,000. And it was also done with seed germination studies that were compared not only in Canada, the United States, but also England.
So
I used to work with Nancy Talbot. We used to dig up the crops in the soil and wrap everything up and correlate it. So the soil and the crop together had code names as to where it appeared, like crop circle formation, sample 1, sample 2, sample 3, sample 4, so that the soil and the crop went together. And there were also soil studies done that were remarkable as well.
would you say that those researchers were open-minded, skeptics, or true believers?
They weren't true believers. They were scientists, and they were doing scientific study
Okay.
to determine what was actually going on. And their results was stunning. And few people bothered to read these studies, read any peer-reviewed journal material, which I think is important. It's the way science moves forward, one step at a time. You examine the data, you come up with a theory, and then you test it.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's go back to the late 80s, early 90s, and this phenomenon. Can you sort of, for anybody who's watching this who may not be aware of crop circles or is new to the subject, can you give them a sense of how this subject began to seep into the mainstream discourse, how it started to become front page news, became on news bulletins, etc., etc. Can you give us a sort of a brief history of how this subject really became into the public consciousness?
Well, it was a number of your researchers there in England, Terence Meaden and a number of other crop circle researchers. I believe his name is Andrew. Is it Andrew Collins? They wrote a book together about investigating crop circles in the 60s, late 60s, and into the 70s and 80s, because they started to explore them and think there was something quite phenomenal going on, and they wanted to understand it more deeply. And then they began to realize there was like a synchronicity to their experiences. I say they would be in a field discussing something like the Mandelbrot set, or computer algorithms, or trying to understand the nature of astronomy, or ancient sites like Stonehenge and things like this, and if there was any relationship between the crop circles and ancient mounds. And they began to discover that crop circles seem to appear near ancient mounds, like your Avebury and your Silbury Hill, and of course Stonehenge. So formations tended to appear near these ancient sites and seem to align with them. So there was a correlation being made that somehow maybe the ancient thinkers, or the ancient druids, or those people who lived in the land centuries before, who had built these ancient mounds or these stone circles, may have had an understanding of ley lines or sensitivities in the ground that the formations related to. And I think that's really quite true.
How did you get involved in this subject, Jennifer?
Curiosity, I guess you'd say. I was a pattern recognizer. I was also late in life, when I was graduating from college, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. So people who are dyslexic think in different frameworks usually than people who are not. We tend to see things in the whole rather than in individual parts. So I was fascinated by the sacred geometry, and I was also studying ancient sites, places like Stonehenge and ancient mounds, because I wanted to understand something about ancient culture that we didn't quite know. I was somehow drawn to that. And in my reading and about ancient sites, I learned about crop circles. And then I was even more fascinated by the amazing geometries, and I wanted to experience it. So the first chance I got, around 2000, when I finally, my kids were old enough to be, left with other people, and I could explore this on my own, I hopped on a plane and came over to England, where they're really the largest prevalent, group of crop circles that happen every season. And I think there's quite a reason for that. You have a large green sand aquifer that runs from your Dover cliff straight down to Glastonbury. It's about 50 miles wide, and it's a limestone and green sand aquifer that most people are unaware of. And that's probably why you have more crop circles in England than anywhere else. But everywhere where crop circles appear, we seem to have the same geologic nature going on underground.
In which case, skeptics might suggest, Jennifer, that this is a natural phenomena of some sort. It's got
Well,
nothing to do with visitations from other planets or anything else, or sacred geometry. It's just something which the Earth naturally does here, there, and everywhere. What say you?
I would agree. And I think it's just not paid attention to and studied enough. It could very well be a natural phenomenon. We have sacred geometry in all forms of nature. All you need to do is look into the top of a beautiful sunflower, and you'll see, the sacred geometry spiral of the universe right there. You can see it in our own DNA. You can see it in the way cells form and crystals form, things like that. And what we've determined about the green sand aquifers is that as water percolates through this limestone and green sand aquifer, the water is stripped of electrons. So when you have a regular bound molecule that then gets stripped of an electron, it becomes an ion, and it becomes a little more unstable, or electrically stimulated, or easily electrically charged, we would say. And this is well known. It becomes hydronium instead of just water. And these green sand aquifers tend to have the largest number of crop circles right along the edges of the aquifer. So, along the edges of, say, any standing body of water, say, even if you take a cylinder of water, a glass of water, and you let it stand overnight or a couple of days, you will notice that the water itself divides by charge, even without anything stripping or moving the electrons, like happens in limestone. So the edges become more electrically sensitive. And that's where the majority of the crop circles are happening. So there is definitely something going on. And this was confirmed by some of the geologists that did the research on this work, specifically a Dartmouth geologist. Oh, I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but I can definitely look it up, and it's along with the BLT research. He determined that the ground under these formations where they appear have been in very significant areas of the formation crystallized. And the only way soil can become crystallized is if it goes to an extremely high temperature, which would totally eradicate the crop on the surface. So what's going on is most likely from the underground up, not the other way around, not the top down, but there is some relationship going on with atmospheric conditions of some sort, because these happen at night when the ionosphere is very thin. So solar rays and things like that, electrically charged particles, can more easily penetrate the upper ionosphere. So there's some reaction going on between deep underground, this, electrically charged area, the edges of the aquifer, and the thin ionosphere that all coagulate together to make these formations appear.
Amazing. Now, that's an extremely helpful explanation, Jennifer, which kind of demystifies to some extent the phenomena. However, it doesn't explain this. Some of the formations, some of the things that we see from the sky are beautiful, for want of a better expression. They appear to be, if they were the hand of a creator, they are communicating something which is transcendent almost. So how does a very rational scientific explanation for what's happening match up with something which visually looks quite stunning at times?
Well, you're absolutely right, Seán. This is the $94,000 question, right? Where and how does consciousness intercede with this dynamics? This is what has stunned and attracted researchers like myself to this field. Because as we say, discovered the human genome, we started to see the genome in the formations, right? Almost as if this dynamic happening with science was reflecting back to the sky, or the earth was responding to the conscious expansion of human awareness, of human genome. Or when we discovered certain, planetary positions or bodies, that were movements that were changing in, say, our astronomy, it would appear. Or, different levels of science as it expanded. When we understood the Higgs boson and things like that, we seem to see that evidence appear in the crop circles. So it's the $94,000 question, how this relates to human consciousness. And is there a relationship between consciousness and the earth? And there might very well be. Many shamans believe that the earth itself is quite conscious and is just a larger form of consciousness than us.
Absolutely. Believe it or not, Jennifer, we have come to the end of this episode on crop circles, and it's flown by, and I thought we were just getting started. So tell people where they can find out more about you, the work that you're involved in, and so on.
Well, one of my film websites, I'm best known as a filmmaker, is called On Wings Productions. That's ONWINGES Productions.com. And they can follow me there. They can also follow me through Sedona MUFON. I'm the Sedona State Section Director for the Mutual UFO Network. So they can go to Sedona MUFON, MUFON.org, and they can get in touch with me there as well.
For now, Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.